It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to this episode of Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill, and we decided on, if you're listening, this is obviously a newer podcast, we decided on a theme. And it stems from an inside joke that's like funny, but not funny. But basically, super long story short, Jess and I have known each other for a really long time, but we live in different parts of the country. I'm in Michigan and she's in Delaware, which is where I grew up. And we talk a lot, business, personal, all of the things. And I'm sure everybody has heard of like when your cycles like sync up, when you spend a lot of time, like women in an office or something. And Jess and I are very much like on the exact same cycle, but we also have some negative traits.
It's problematic. We call it, so like this upcoming week, we're probably due for our cycle within the next 4 or 5 days. Also, it's not like my cycle is every perfectly 28 days. It's like sometimes 24 days, sometimes 26 days, and it's literally the exact same as Jill's. Yeah. And we call this week leading up to that week our unhinged week. So we decided once a month during this week, we're going to provide to you an unhinged Jess and Jill. So this is our April unhinged, because usually what happens is before we realize what's going on, we start texting each other off the wall stuff, or like I'll start crying about something. Like I'll have like a mental breakdown about something that is not really serious. She'll like lose her mind at somebody in Costco. Like stuff will go down, and then we'll be like, oh shoot, it's happening again. Like it's the unhinged time of month. So that's what we're going to do. We don't have notes for this podcast each month. We're going to just talk about like, okay, here's some stuff we're going through or things that we've tried or experimented with our own health journeys. So you get to see us a little bit more on a personal level versus like us lecturing you about a topic every week.
Yeah. And we have, so it is funny, actually, like Jess said, we don't even like time it. We will literally be texting each other, like unhinged is the most perfect word. We will literally be texting each other just such unhinged statements and thoughts. And then it usually takes a second before one of us is like, oh, we're
doing it again.
It's happening. Like, let's talk about this next week. So we always joke that we're not going to make any large life, business, any type of decision until we are out of this stage. And we've officially self-diagnosed with PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And this is like, we're joking about this. Like, obviously this can be awful, right? For a lot of people. But I felt like we just want to like make light of a little bit of this craziness. And we joke because it comes with like just the most drastic mood shift. I swear it can happen even like midday where you're like, oh, it's done. I'm fine now. It's not even like I went to sleep and I woke up. It's like, oh, I think it's over.
And mine is usually like paired with severe insomnia. So like I have gone through all of the rabbit holes. I have asked my doctor about insomnia. I've taken magnesium supplementation. So like this is seriously something that like I'm trying to work on in my own life because it is disruptive to my function. But the week before my period, I have the worst insomnia. I have crazy, scary dreams that are so vivid that I'm like scared to go back to sleep. Like Brett makes fun of me because he's like, the things you're scared about are like things 11-year-olds are scared about. They're not like real things. And when I wake up in the morning, I know that. But at like 2 a.m. when I wake up, I'm terrified.
There's definitely a monster under my bed right now.
Yeah, it's like the verge of hallucination type scary, vivid dreams. But it's only like it's absolutely cyclical and hormonal. And like for a long time, I had researched bipolar 2. So like it's almost like manic episodes where I'm like less risk averse and I make more drastic decisions that maybe I wouldn't make in a normal, well-rested state of mind. And it's like, I don't know what comes first, the hormonal changes or the lack of sleep, but they build on each other and it leads to some sort of dysfunction. And sometimes I feel like those, and again, we're not trying to make light of it because I have never been diagnosed with bipolar 2, but it's like a mild version of mania where I'm like, it's great because sometimes these risks that I take really work out in business or in whatever. And then other times I'm like, what did I just do? So anyway, we've been looking into PMDD. And again, like I've talked to my doctor about all these symptoms and we're trying to figure out what's going on. I've been getting labs done and all of that. So it's like an actual thing. It's not just saying like, my mood's wacky, but yeah, we're pretty aligned in it. So I always tell Jill, like, I'm not going to take any of her. She has a new like business idea every other day. She's just like blooming with business ideas all the time. And anytime she's like, I think I'm going to do this, or I think I'm going to make this shift or whatever, I'm like, no, we're going to wait until next week, like when we're level again. Yeah.
Exercise, please, nothing until then.
I'll put a note in my calendar. We'll bring it back up. We can loop around to this topic.
And it's so funny because like, I feel like it's always like period related where people think like we're unhinged, we're crampy, we're cranky, we're all of these things. We are absolutely 3000%. Like even all of my, PMS symptoms, premenstrual, obviously, but like that week is like atrocious in terms of like Jess said, like my sleep and then my energy takes a hit. I don't know if that's just because it's happening or if it's because my sleep is so horrible. And it really is just this like full on spiral. And then it's definitely, the word manic is like far too accurate because you look back and you're like, that was like so irrational. Like I'm so annoyed with myself. It's like when you get drunk and you do dumb things and the next day you're like, fuck, right? Like, why did I do that? And that's totally what it is. And we joke even like amongst our like other coaches and peers and stuff, like, sorry, unhinged week, like we'll chill out, just tell us.
Like I'm being very direct with feedback. Yeah, like I'll be very, very direct with feedback with our other coaches. And I'm like, listen, I stand by everything I said, but I apologize for my tone because I'm not thinking, like I'm just being direct. I promise.
It's not aggressive.
I promise it's not personal, but like I'll just, me and Jill just text each other for the next few days and we won't include it on the group text.
Yeah. So we actually like definitely we were like, okay, we recognize this like pattern between ourselves. And then we like randomly realized one day, like, oh my God, we're in the same exact cycle. And then we had this like inside joke basically. And I was like, I feel like we need to like tell at least the people close to us, like, hey, I recognize this is a problem. I see the pattern in myself. I'm actively working to correct it. Even with like lifting, like I am like Hulk smash on my cycle, but the week before I'm like, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to work out. I hate the thought of it. And I definitely, actually this is a good point too, in terms of like cycle syncing, and this could be a whole episode in and of itself. I'm against it in like this like very structured manner. However, if you genuinely just feel differently and you want to lift later, like it doesn't have to be cycle related. If you just haven't gotten good sleep or you're really stressed, like modify your training and the things that you do in your life accordingly. It doesn't have to be because you're in your luteal phase or because you're on your cycle.
Yes. We are pro consistency and pro listen to your body. So like this past week actually was more of that week for me, like the 7 days ago. I don't know if it was just lack of sleep or what, but I still show up. And if I don't do as much or if I don't lift as high of intensity or as heavy volume, like that's cool. I'm still being consistent. So yeah, I'm definitely big about that. it really bothers me when I see a lot of these coaches and trainers talk about like syncing your workouts to your cycle and going less intense on some weeks and more on others. Like that's really silly. There's not really any research to back that. If you feel strong during your cycle, lift heavy. Yeah. Utilize it on the days that work for you. And I always tell clients that with food stuff too. We want to make like the normal days as optimal as possible because there will be days that suck. There will be days where stuff pops up or your kids are up all night or whatever. Like, so optimize the good days no matter what time of the month it is.
Yeah. And it's so true. And, there are definitely trainers that wholeheartedly believe in cycle syncing. And I feel like maybe they just don't even realize that it is just about listening to your body. And again, if like day 1, 2, and 3 of my cycle, I'm like game on in the gym. Like that's just how my body is. But if I listen to this, I would scale myself back and miss out on opportunities to make progress or make faster progress just because somebody told me to, right? Because of what day it is.
I kind of do the same thing with like deload weeks too. So I think a lot of clients, like they will read about how bodybuilders lift or what this person or that person said. Well, I'm supposed to take a deload week every 6 weeks on the dot. And it's like, time out. You went on vacation 2 weeks ago. Like that was your deload week. Or like, okay, my kids are sick this week and I'm not working out at a very high intensity. I'm going to use this as my deload week and go to yoga twice. So like, listen to your body in that way too, because there's going to be times where you don't feel like working out, but you feel fine. Like make those days hard. Challenge yourself on the normal days, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah. And, lacking motivation and stuff, that's a whole different ballgame than I only got 5 hours of sleep, but I normally get 8, or I had a very stressful event this morning and I'm exhausted. Like those are very different things. But I do think that it requires a lot of self-awareness and really listening to your body. So in terms of like cycles specifically, I actually think it's super important to track and monitor, because it's really cool that like if Jess and I didn't track, we'd probably just be like off doing unhinged shit with no filter, right? And no remorse and whatever. But like we recognize this pattern. We see, okay, this is a thing. And now we can say, what is this related to? How do I get to the root of this? Jess is like, okay, I have insomnia and I'm more tired, but I'm probably just not sleeping right, So I think it's super important to have that self-awareness, and that applies to like workouts and motivation. Like we all have days where we're on the couch and I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym right now. Like I really don't feel like it. And you have to be able to discern, like, is this just me being lazy and I have to push through this motivation, or is this actually listening to my body? Because I feel like people are like, oh, I was listening to my body. And I'm like, okay, well, your body's not telling you to only lift once this month. Like you got to do more than that. So I think that's a balancing act. And honestly, I think that comes with time, and that comes with really pushing through on the days that you don't feel like it for a while until you know the difference. But in terms of like cycle specifically, if I'm like bloated or whatever, is it more uncomfortable to lift when I'm bloated? Sure. But guess what? I'm probably not going to just wear a sports bra and leggings to the gym that day. I'm probably just going to wear a big t-shirt and be comfortable. So it's like doing little things like that. Or maybe I'm like, I don't even want to show my face in the gym today. I'm just going to do a home workout today. Right. Like it's always like, how can I pivot? And actually this week specifically, it was not yesterday, maybe the day before, I had a lift and I was like all day, I talked myself out of it. I was like, I'll do it later. And I finally realized at like 4:00, I'm like, oh, I totally could have done that earlier. And I was like doing this to myself. So I went down to lift and I tried and I pushed through and I was like, this is just not happening today. So I walked on the treadmill for 30 minutes. I'm like, that's okay.
That's something. Too. Yeah. I do that all the time.
Like, if I push through this, I knew like I'm probably going to hurt myself because I'm just like not being intentional. But I also lift heavy, and you can't say, oh, I was going to hurt myself with my 3-pound dumbbells. Like, no, you're probably not. You're okay. Like, keep going. So yeah, I think that's important.
A good test. And this goes for like, if you're lacking energy one day, if you didn't get enough sleep, if you're sick, a lot of times people are like, well, should I just rest or should I work through it? I think a good test is if you feel better after your workouts, you should be doing your workout. So a lot of times I'll tell clients, like, go do 2 exercises. Don't like push and expect you have to have your best hour-long workout or something. Go do a couple things, and I'll have them actually text me before and after and say, like, send me your energy levels and your mood on a scale of 1 to 10 before. Send them to me again after. If you get through 2 or 3 lifts and you are feeling way worse in terms of mood and energy, stop that workout. Your body might really need rest, or go do stretches or yoga or something else, for like the walk on the treadmill, something that's going to be like a slow down recovery type activity. 9 times out of 10, you're going to feel better once you start. So like, that's a pretty good indication that like your body really needs rest if you're feeling worse once you're into it.
For sure. And I know that about myself too, right? Like for me, I do that. I'm like, just go do it. 99.9% of the time I do the first lift and I'm like, cool, we're just going to like knock this out. Mostly because my brain, like starting something and not finishing, like doesn't connect for me. So I want to see the task through, but I was like literally getting pissed off when I was deadlifting, and I was like, this is just we're not getting anywhere here. Like we got to stop. But I think that like it's this week, like I know that about myself, and I don't use it as a crutch. But I pull back when I need to. And there are times like I'll lift on a week like this and get pretty decent sleep and be fine, but my mood is way off, or vice versa. It's not always just everything is crumbling around me, even though mentally I might feel like it is.
Do we want to get into things that we have tried that have like helped us with some of these symptoms, or there could be so many different episodes spawning off of this, but
I know. Okay, solutions. So like let's like pick a few symptoms that we have that are really like super noticeable in what we do, like maybe mood specifically first versus physical. So like, not so much sleep, but like I'm very irritable and I'm very like don't like I'm easily triggered, short fuse, like that type of thing. I wouldn't say I'm like angry. Like I don't think I ever really get angry unless somebody really does something to piss me off. But just like a lot more irritable, lower mood, just lower motivation in general. I don't know. Is that like kind of what you feel too?
Mood is, and this has been my entire life. I think this was probably before I had a cycle, honestly. I remember when I was a kid, my parents, my mood regulates so much based on my sleep. So I think the cycle affects my sleep and the sleep affects my mood. When I was younger, I remember my parents being like, you can't go to a sleepover. Like, I remember a period of my life where it was like, you can't go to sleepovers because you're being mean. Because it was like I would come home after a night of not sleeping enough, and then instantly it's like a different Jessie. So for me, a lot of it is doing what I can. Like, what can I control?
Yeah.
I can drink less caffeine, that's for sure. I can watch less Netflix or stare at my phone less at night, and it definitely helps my sleep quality. So even if I do wake up more frequently, I end up getting better quality sleep. And I know that now I have an Aura ring that kind of tracks everything. It is like crazy noticeable when I plug my phone in on the other side of the room, or when I say like, okay, I'm turning the TV off at 10 p.m. no matter what. I know that sounds late. I should probably be turning it off earlier, but like realistically, like sometimes when I get my kids to bed and it's 8:30 and then I clean the house up and then I'm like, I deserve this time binge watching Bravo. And it's like,
I think so many people can relate to that though.
yeah, but and in that moment, it's like, yeah, I deserve this, and I'm relaxing, and I spent all day working or taking care of these other little people. Like, this is my me time. But my me time then turns into self-destructive time because the next day I have less energy and I'm grumpier or whatever. Whereas if I just turn the TV off and go to bed, my whole next day is more pleasant. So controlling the controllables, we say that a lot. But for me, it's screen time and caffeine. Caffeine majorly affects me. Sunshine majorly affects me. So just getting outside when I can during the day helps to kind of regulate my circadian rhythm too. So still not the best sleep of the month, but better than it would be if I was self-destructing in those ways.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is actually you mentioned the aura, and like I knew this about myself, and I could notice like a regular like shift in my sleep pattern. But until I had that like actual data in front of me, and like I don't use my aura as gospel, right? Like I always listen to my body over anything else, but I would see very specifically. I mean, Jessie and I are like friends on there. She can see my scores. Like most of the time, mine's like 89 plus on my readiness and my sleep. But that week, I mean, I'm in like 60s and 70s. Like it is a drastic difference. I also think that I'm the same in terms of sunshine. I have to get outside as much as possible. And now that it's nicer weather, it's like such a game changer. I feel like I can very easily shift my mood by just like, I'll literally go on my deck and like take a nap for 30 minutes in the sun and come back and I'm like, wow, I feel amazing. But I think I also am so much more emotional that like I ignore the logic in my brain. So all these things that Jessie's saying, I agree to, but sometimes in the moment, I can't even rationalize that for myself. So I will literally like, okay, take 5 and let's like write this out. What are you actually feeling? And it's just like random brain dump. I'm mad, I'm annoyed, I'm overwhelmed. I have X, Y, and Z to do today, whatever it is, right? Like my journal is like, I don't know, if the doctor looked at it, they'd probably be like, we need to talk. But I just go through and write like my random thoughts. And it's like, what actually, like Jess said, what can I control? Like, what can I actually do today? And what is going to help me? Like, what do I need to shift my focus to? So it's not like affirmations and you're amazing and you're strong and all of it. It's just like logic. What can I control? What can I ignore today? And what's going to make me feel better?
And like, can I do one thing? Like we talk about this all the time with clients, but especially with people who struggle with anxiety, like with clinically diagnosed anxiety and depression, a lot of times logically we know doing something's going to make me feel better. But when you're in those moments, you don't want to do anything. So so do the littlest one thing. Go outside for 5 minutes. You do not need to go do a full hour-long workout because somebody told you it's going to alleviate your depression. Do one thing. That one thing could turn into another thing because you're going to feel a little bit better. Maybe every single day you just do that one thing. So that's kind of how I approach it too. It's like, I'm not saying I'm never going to watch TV again at night. Like that's totally unrealistic, but maybe a lot of times I'll have this rule. We have a TV in our bedroom. It's an argument between me and my husband because I like have an addictive personality and I have no off switch. So I'm like, just keep it out of the room and I won't turn it on. So my rule is like, I'm allowed to watch as much TV as I want, but it has to be downstairs in our living room because then at least my brain is associating our bedroom with sleep versus with overstimulation and other stuff. So like set little small things for yourself. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And like, it's very legitimate if you are like, when you're in your funk, not wanting to do anything is a really real feeling. And sometimes you might need to get medical intervention to get that little step of motivation. Maybe you need to get something to kind of help you get past that. But then action on top of that can breed more action.
And it could literally be like, I don't know. I think we've all struggled with like, we look at the dishes in the sink and it's like, I don't feel like it. And then it's piling up. And then you're like, maybe I'll just throw all those dishes away and go to Target and start over, right? Like, I don't even need to wash them. I'll just trash them. They need to be replaced anyway. It's like, go wash 2 things. Go put 2 things in the dishwasher. I will like, if I see a pot left over from dinner that we haven't touched, which is like kind of rare with my husband in the house, but let's say we did, right? I did a crock pot or an Instant Pot dinner and it's just like sitting there on the counter. I'm like, just go put soap and water in it and let it soak. That's it. That's all you have to do, right? So it's like little things like that. And
take a shower. Like obviously it doesn't have to be like if it's late at night, but like if it's a morning and it's easy for us because we work from a computer. If we're still in our pajamas, catching up on emails, like go take a shower and wash my face and do my hair. And then I come back to it and I'm like, I feel a little bit better approaching my day.
I think it's so funny that you just said that because I'm sitting here. I'm unsure if I brushed my teeth today. Definitely haven't brushed my hair. And this is like the week. And here we are, like, I'm not doing the things. We did have a late night last night for celebrations. But like I think that makes such a difference. Like sometimes I will, if I'm like in this funk, I'm like, throw some jeans on. You go, pretend you're going to meet a friend for lunch. You would not go like this. Go do that and go sit at a coffee shop for an hour. Like change your environment. Like just do something else. Go outside. It doesn't have to be go to a coffee shop.
And it just doesn't need to be the expectation that it's going to like fix you and put you in a great, positive, perfect mood. It's just do something. Do a little something.
Oh, you know what, too, with what you mentioned about like watching Bravo late at night. So I'm the same thing. Like I imagine like reality TV is going to like be intertwined in this podcast at some point because Jess and I are like she said, like full on Bravo junkies. But one thing that I will do is if I have like an episode, one thing, I only have Peacock, so I can't watch it the night that it comes out, like in the moment. So I already have to like wait. But if I'm at that point of like, it's a long day and it's already like 9, it's like, if I watch this, like I'm really going to be pushing it. I will not. And then I'm like, if you want to watch it soon, that badly, get up early. Guess what happens? I don't get up early and it waits and it's fine. And then it's not urgent anymore. But for me, I feel like, okay, it's going to be released. I got to watch it. So I make myself wait. And that might be like silly, but like for me personally, like delaying that gratification is very helpful for me so that I'm not like allowing myself to like indulge instantly. Like give it a sec, like make sure this is like beneficial for you and is it helpful? Because of course, like you said in the moment, I'm like, yeah, this is what's going to make me feel better. Laying on the couch, getting a blanket and watching Bravo. And I'm like, but is this like good? Am I going to like be happy about this decision tomorrow? So I literally make myself like wait and sleep on it because like you said, I will like be 100% sure about a decision. I'll sleep and wake up and be like, oh my God, thank God I didn't like send that text or pay for that thing or do that, buy that, whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, so glad I didn't do that.
And brain health wise, like brain science wise, what she is saying right now applies across the board. If you can delay whatever that instant gratification is, you can train your brain to have these new pathways. It's like your neural pathways that control willpower are like a muscle that can be trained and get stronger and stronger and stronger. So the more you put off one little instant gratification thing, the easier it's going to be to say no to that junk food that you don't want tomorrow. Like that actually is something that you can train over time. So that's pretty cool that you're applying it in such a little thing like that.
So small. I even do it with like if I'm making a cart, like, you know, one day I see an ad and I'm like, I have to buy $800 from this boutique, right? I always go make my cart and I close it. Actually, I don't close it. I leave the tab open. I like go away. I have, I think, 170 Safari tabs open on my phone. But I'll go back and be like, ew, I don't even like any of this. Like, I'm so glad I didn't buy it. But if I do like every couple of like weeks, whatever, I go in and go through my tabs to try to close some out. If I go back and I'm like, oh, I like this would like I still need this or I want this or I find myself like looking for it in other places, I'm like, just go buy the thing, right? Like you want it, you need it, whatever. But so often I go back, I'm like, ew, I don't even like this, or why was I going to buy that? Like that's so dumb. So yeah, I try to do that for myself because I feel like I have to like trick myself essentially to do those things. And then in terms of like physical symptoms, bloating, I don't know. I mean, we talked about this, I think, recently. For me, bloating is like a pretty big one in the days leading up to my cycle. And it's very like specific. It's also very brief. Sometimes I just like ride the wave. Sometimes I might like increase my water or take a little extra magnesium or be super mindful of like my fiber. I might not eat out those days. Like Anthony might be like, let's go get sushi. And I'm like, I can't. Like I will wake up miserable tomorrow. So like I do like little things like that of like, can this just wait? Like if am I really gonna feel any like better after this?
That's
So
wise.
yeah, I don't get like cravings or anything like that though. I mean, you know,
I don't know. I think I do a little bit, but I always love all the foods. I definitely get some GI issues in terms of like bowel movements.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's smart to, proactively treat it appropriately with your food intake. I think I kind of roll with that one a little bit. So with the other mood swing type symptoms, and again, I think we could probably spawn this off and make it an entire episode of itself. I went to the doctor for like, hey, I think maybe it's postpartum depression. I don't know. I'm just really low and this is not my norm. I'm feeling very socially anxious. Like, what's going on? And in talking to Brett about it, he's like, okay, this isn't just postpartum. Like you've been dealing with this roller coaster up and down now for several years. And every time you're like justifying it, whenever you're in a good place, you're like, well, I'm better now. So I don't need to go get help. I don't need to talk to anybody. So anyway, I have been kind of playing around and self-medicating a little bit based on some of the research about microdosing mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so Jill had access to a company that was producing them legally for research purposes. And so with microdosing,
we had to do some research.
Obviously. But like, so with microdosing, you're not taking it, like I've never hallucinated or anything like that. I've never taken enough to be in a state of like what people would do on a guided trip with a doctor, with a psychiatrist.
Totally want to do, by the way, but
I'm a little scared, but yeah, probably it would probably be good for us, honestly. But so I've been following the protocol. I forget what the guy's name is, Stamen or something. The protocol that the like biggest researcher about microdosing who's out there has recommended, which is like 0.2 or 0.25 grams every other day. I've been doing a different protocol where it's every 4 days because I feel like that's impactful enough without me having to do it more frequently. And I have got to say, I went back to my doctor, like, I think I am okay, which is wild. But like, I think it has really impacted my mental health with anxiety and depression to the point where I'm like, I feel really, really, really normal and happy and like myself again. And again, I'm only taking enough, like I'm taking less than 0.25 grams every 4 days. And I'll just take it at night for a couple hours before I go to bed. But what I find is the next day, even when I'm not like, I haven't just taken it, I will approach my tasks at work more clearly, where it's like, oh, it's just one thing to focus on at a time versus having this overwhelming feeling that I was having for so many months. So I feel like that, I don't think that that's necessarily cycle related, but that has been a game changer for my personal mental health.
Generally speaking, yeah, mentally. I actually Googled the protocol or formula that you're talking about. So Paul Stamets, hopefully I'm pronouncing
that. Yeah, he's the man.
His specific formula, and this is based on like a 74 kilogram individual in terms of dosing, but it's low dose to high dose. So it could be, like you said, 0.1 to like 0.3 or greater for psilocybin or mushrooms, and then a combination with lion's mane, 5 to 20 grams. And niacin, 100 to 200 milligrams. So I have actually not seen this specifically. I only use, actually, I don't know if you use lion's mane then? You do this like combination?
So far I have just been doing the 0.2 grams of psilocybin. The psilocybin, niacin, lion's mane combination. With the niacin, if you guys, again, talk to a medical doctor about this if you choose to start something like this. But with the niacin, when you buy it, you just need to, a lot of them are sold in way higher doses than what you need for this type of protocol. So
we were 200 milligrams super low.
Yeah, so he's like cutting pills in half or in quarters to make it this dose, because the niacin will make you feel flushed and tingly, kind of weird. But what's his name? Paul Stamets.
Yeah.
So with this protocol, it's very cool. After this episode, actually, we could maybe share something about it so you guys could go on and participate. He has this thing that anybody can participate in, and he encourages people who are and are not microdosing to get reliable data. So they have like 6,000 people who have never tried it against people who are trying it. And they've shown improvements in cognition as well. So they're looking into it for people who have like Parkinson's and stuff, because their motor control is so much better. They do like an exercise on this website where you're like tapping and all this stuff. So I just signed up for that to participate in the research. And again, a lot of those things are not, a lot of the mushrooms that do show benefits in research are not psychedelic. If that's something that you're worried about, a lot of them like lion's mane and I'm drawing a blank on the other, maybe tiger tail. There's like another one that is supposed to be really, really good for people with like anxiety and PTSD specifically. So anyway, it's really fascinating. But I personally, like, it has changed my life over the past like 6 months. So yeah, look into that if you guys are interested.
I think, I was going to say, I like that you mentioned like different types too. I personally took lion's mane. I had the most insane dreams, but they were like kind of like you mentioned, like scary, but almost like just very like dark. And I was like, whoa, that's like negative, like mood shifting for me. And I'd stop for a couple of days. I was using these drops and I would stop. I'm like, maybe it's just like a weird, time of the month, whatever. And every time I did it, I was like, okay, clearly me and lion's mane don't jive. But it's interesting because I take other supplements that might have like a small dose of it and I don't notice anything. So I don't know if maybe I was just taking too much. I'll have to look at like the dosage of the drops I was taking, but psilocybin specifically. Okay, so you did like 0.2 every couple of days. You said every 4 days?
Even a little bit less than that. So I have them in form of like a chocolate bar, and each chocolate bar is 1 gram. I will do as little as like a fifth or a sixth. Yeah. And I've done up to a quarter, and up to a quarter still feels fine. Doesn't really affect, it doesn't affect me at all. But why not make it go longer if it's still working at lower doses? So I've been taking like the lowest, what do they call it? The
1 or whatever.
Minimal effective dose. Yeah.
Okay. So I take, now this is like a whole other like spin off of this, which is like so on brand for this episode, but I also am diagnosed ADHD, and that has been like a journey for me. So Adderall has been in and out of my life for a while. And I did take a little over a year off and like played with like mushroom psilocybin, and it helped so much. I definitely had to be very strategic with my strategy, but the struggle is the tolerance build up to the mushrooms. It wasn't something that I could take every day. So I was kind of struggling on those like other days. And I'm like literally like itching to get to like that, like the 4th day, like you said, so I could take something in terms of like focus. I also think that like ADHD, and this is for me personally and totally an opinion, that it's like, I don't know, it's like your addiction to like caffeine or coffee. Like some people just like physically like to hold a coffee in their hand and like the act of drinking it in the morning. Yeah. So for me, it's like almost like a mind game of like, I didn't take something for my focus, so I can't focus. Like it's just, that connection.
It's mental.
Yeah. So it's hard.
I've read that it's very important that during those days that you are not on it, that you are very mindful about changing your behaviors and your patterns. So this is why it's so important that, again, I'm not recommending this to anybody. I think you should talk to somebody who's like a licensed qualified professional in it. There's a lot of different universities that are doing like research that you could sign up for and participate in. But the doctors who are walking people through this are pairing it with cognitive behavioral therapy. So on your off days, the idea is, hey, this is like our brains are malleable, and this is actually changing our brains and making it more like making us more acceptable to change some of our more addictive patterns or our habits that we've had. So again, for me, with caffeine being my addiction primarily, or technology and scrolling and stuff, I find that those days in between when I'm not taking it, I'm very intentional about changing those patterns. I'm going to try to go to bed early. I'm going to try to turn my screen off. And I actually feel like it's easier physically versus normally I'm fighting my own brain. Like it sounds very much like what addicts go through, right? Like I'm like, well, I really want 1 cup of coffee. I really want to just scroll a little bit longer. And like, it might sound like silly things, but it really adds up if it interferes with your sleep and impacts your mood and all this stuff. So the days that I am not on it in between, I find it is easier to make those healthy decisions. I find myself wanting to be around technology less. I find myself wanting to just play outside with my kids more. So I think it's being really intentional about it versus just saying like, oh, I'm going to take it and it's going to fix me, I think is super important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I agree. And it's, I think that's such a struggle. And I'm sure other people with Adderall can relate because it is such a strong substance that there's not a lot that's going to like match up to that. Right. And I know for me that is very much like you said, I lean on it as a crutch when I'm not being intentional with the things that I should be in terms of getting like, I have to be 8 hours of sleep and very, very regimented, and anything off that routine, which is hard, right? Like life happens and that's not always going to be the case. But I could be better about doing the other things that will help me. And I'm not always, and it's very much just like not being intentional enough with that and making it a priority, because of course it's easier to just take the thing that helps me do what I need to do and move on. I also have looked into the NAD, like IV infusion therapy. And it's actually used for addiction, like treatment. It's like a protocol. Now, I don't know anything about it. This is like a physician that was like explaining it to me that runs these protocols. But basically it's like a couple of hours of an infusion. And it's like, I think it's like back-to-back days or once every couple of weeks or something for a few weeks in a row. But that's actually something I'm looking into, which I'm always open to like sharing any of this stuff that we try, because like if it works, cool. Obviously something like that is super expensive, but I'm very fascinated by like the brain and neuroscience and all of those things, especially knowing like what I struggle with in my brain. And I'm like, man, if there's something that can like really help, it's cool. But I think psilocybin has like so many benefits that like aren't, I don't want to say public knowledge, but like people
they're not
talk about. Yeah.
My perception has completely changed. Like, I mean, my friends in college would tell you, because I would never try that ever in my life. Like, I'm not going to do drugs. This is crazy. But like, if you think about the pharmaceutical things that influence our cognition, that have a million side effects, like if there is something that is more natural that does not have negative side effects that could possibly work, again, talk to your doctor about it. Make sure that you're being monitored, or that you're also pairing it with therapy or whatever you might need. But absolutely life-changing for me personally. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I think just go do research on it. If you're skeptical, or if you're like, I don't know about this, it's not mainstream, like go do research, because there are thousands and thousands of research studies that have been done just showing benefit after benefit after benefit for depression, anxiety, people with cancer who are anxious about death. Like there's so many benefits for mental health.
Yeah. And it's funny, like the dosing, I remember the first time I tried it, I was like so nervous. And it's definitely like I know my body and I know the dosing very well for myself now, but I can like manipulate. And that's what's really cool about it, is like you said, like I can be like, okay, I know this is all I need to get through today. Or if I want to just have a little extra fun by myself at home, I might take a little extra, just whatever you got to do. But I think it's super cool and I love something that isn't mainstream, because I'm like, well, now I want to know more. Like what's everyone this?
But it's been around for like, it is natural. Like, it's nothing new. It's just something that pharmaceutical companies have not learned to capitalize on yet. So there we go.
I'm sure it will happen.
And
No.
also, we very much like, obviously, this is what we do for a living, but like, we very much care about the small habits. So we're getting enough steps, we're focusing on our sleep, we're getting exercise, we're honing in our nutrition, and we're still struggling with some of these mental health things. With Jill, with her ADHD, with me, with some depression symptoms, and like, we're still focusing on the important things. So, in saying that, whatever route you choose to seek help, if you struggle with any of these things, like seek help from a professional, but also there's a lot that you can do in terms of move your body, add some nutrients. Like nutrients are chemicals that our body breaks down. So if we're only eating junk and processed things and sitting on the couch and not moving, like your body is not going to operate optimally, and your brain is part of your body.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it's so underrated, and I think people kind of skate over it. But honestly, anytime somebody comes to me with like hormonal or new anxiety or constant fatigue or whatever, it almost like annoys people sometimes, I think. But my first questions are always like, what does your day-to-day look like? Do you work out, and what do you do? What does your nutrition look like? How long has it looked that way? Because those things matter so much. And like Jess said, all of these treatments, all of these other things, they don't matter, right? Like we can't slap a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? Like if this is a problem, for one, like getting to the root of the problem, but making sure that you're taking care of your body. So many things will like level off and self-correct. Even women that come to us with like an irregular cycle, or just absence of a cycle, or really severe PMS symptoms, in terms of like cramps and, heavy bleeding and all of those things. I'm always like, what does nutrition look like? Because the power of that is so underrated. But also when people struggle with like mood things like that, or lack of motivation, I always go to two things. One, well, really three. One, screen time. What does your screen time look like on your phone? That's always like a good self check. I actually make my phone give me a report every week. Now I work from my phone, so mine's probably like outrageous compared to other people that don't do that. But I know like where my boundaries should be, and if I'm doing too much. The other thing is that I think is wildly, underrated, I guess. I'm like, do you ever let yourself be bored? We're bored, or we're distracting ourselves, or we don't want to do something, or we're not motivated. So we pick up our phone and scroll, or we scroll Netflix and we post on Facebook. What new show can I watch? I've watched them all. And it's like, maybe just be bored. Like paint a picture, go outside and like, I don't know, freaking hopscotch with your husband. Like I know it sounds dumb, but like, be bored and be creative.
It's also really, really good for your brain health. Like that is something where that's a big one that I've incorporated in my life. And I can tell the difference when I incorporate guided meditation and deep breathing or yoga, and when I do not. And I'm somebody who's always go, go, go. I'm always planning. I'm always thinking about my next project. So when I first was introduced to those things, I thought like, well, that's stupid. You can't just turn off your brain. When I talk to clients about this stuff, it's like, no, you're not just going through the motions. I'm not just going to yoga class. It's learning how to turn off your brain and only focus on the now, only focus on your breath. And that sounds like some hippie BS. It is not. This is not a woo-woo concept. It physically changes the construct of your brain so that you are less reactive, and so that you think clearer and you have less anxiety when you go through other parts of your life. So like if you want to do some sort of introduction, like there's so many free apps and stuff out there now where you can listen to guided meditations and learn
go on YouTube
how to turn off your brain.
Yeah. EFT tapping is another one. Okay, whatever. I was like, I'm just going to try this before I talk about it. And I did it. And I was like, whoa.
I started crying.
Yeah. I was like, how?
My counselor, so like we've gone to marriage counseling, and my counselor suggested that to me for my anxiety. And I was like, okay, tapping on my face, sure. And like, again, at this point, by the time I'm seeing her, I'm already like, I'm very bought into the fact that meditation changes my brain based on doing it. But she described to me, and it's a lot of it is like the somatic therapy that you've gone to, the connection between physically doing something with your body and saying these things that your brain is saying. Like there's something that happens where it's like, oh, we're connecting our subconscious with our physical body. So these emotions might come up. I've had clients cry during yoga, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, you're just slowing down for the first time in 25 years. Like, this is great. That's awesome. I'm glad that
this is some emotion.
And we like to suppress those emotions. There's this study. Sorry, I interrupted your 3 thing. We'll come back to your third
my
thing.
third was what you were saying. It was parasympathetic activity. So
good. So slow down.
Yeah.
So parasympathetic activity, guys, is your rest and digest system. So it's your system that allows you to heal and digest versus our flight or fight, go, go, go. So even if we think we're not stressed because it's not like something you perceive as a stressor, we're go, go, go all the time. If we're staring at our phone, if we're thinking about something that happened at work earlier, like you're stressed. So our body reacts. Adding in these
meditation or yoga are boring, you probably need it so much more than
anybody else. Yeah, exactly. So there's this study that they did. There's a lot of different animals. You can look this up on YouTube and it's pretty cool. So going back to like the brain body stuff and the somatic healing, you can look up different species of animals that when they go through shock or trauma, after the shock or like the threat has walked away, the animals will shake. They will physically shake. And then
there's a very specific YouTube video about this.
Oh, it's so cool. And there's a lot of different species that do this. So they will physically get it out of their system. Then they'll stand up and they'll walk away. And we don't do that. We don't do, like, a lot of times we're scared to cry because we don't want to express our feelings, or we're going to keep it down if we want to scream or whatever. But there's an inherent thing where we physically need to get out these emotions and we suppress. And then we end up with like mental health issues, anxiety, depression, insomnia, all this stuff, and we're not getting it out. So there was a study where they took this concept from animals and they applied it to a community that had been hit by I believe it might have been a hurricane. It was a hurricane or a tsunami, and they had lost a lot of people, and they did it at a hospital with all these nurses who had lost family members and all this stuff. And the same thing happened. So they actually applied dance as like the physical expression. Yeah. So they like talked to these women about like, hey, can we share some of the things we've gone through emotionally through this traumatic event? And then after they had them, okay, we're going to play music and you're just going to wiggle around. You're going to dance. You're going to shake your body. Basically, we're shaking it out. And that same thing happened. So many of the women just started crying and they're like, what is going on here? And they said, this is good. This is the purpose of this experiment, is to see, can we help us just get past some of this subconscious like stuff that we're holding on to and being really tense about. So it's wild. It sounds hokey. There is so much science behind it. So
nervous system is wild. And this, I feel like we may likely next episode will be something about this with like somatic and parasympathetic and all of those things. But same thing. Like I did a somatic course online and we would dance at the beginning of and she was like, go off screen, turn some music on, do your thing, whatever you got to do, like shake it out. And people, this is something I learned, crying is actually, it helps. It is good for your nervous system. It's healing. It does help you calm. Like people think, like you said, like I got to bottle these emotions, or I don't have time for this, or you got to move on, toughen up, like cry, like that. You feel that.
I'm that person, like holding it all in.
Oh, same. We don't kettle talking right now. 3,000.
We don't want to be vulnerable, but it's like sometimes that can just help you to be like, now I'm clear. Yeah. Now I can think clearly, and I'm not like, sometimes if you're holding on to stuff, then you might express it in an inappropriate way to the smallest little thing versus addressing the actual issue.
Yeah. I mean, Jess can attest to this, and anybody that knows me personally, I'm very much like, if I'm leaving an event, I want to Irish goodbye. I don't want emotions. I don't want you to hug me and say it was nice to see you. I'm like, no, I'm just, bye, talk to you later. Or like somebody's crying, I'm like, I don't know how to console you. I'm so sorry. I love you. But I'll be over here. Just tell me when you're done. Obviously, like not good. Like everyone needs to get their emotions out, and I fully support that. But yeah, everything parasympathetic, it was such a learning experience, and it truly, like I want to say I discovered it like 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. It absolutely like changed who I am at my core, because I did the same thing. I was like, toughen up, move on, do all these things. And I was like, I started to listen to my body and realize how much was pent up in there. So that's definitely next topic. Look at us being unhinged and being so productive.
Still productive. Yeah.
And we're going to think this was later and be like, ooh, delete.
This is solid. We're done. I think we can wrap it up. I think that was a good unhinged April.
Okay, cool. Unhinged April. Super fast recap. So Jess and I have self-diagnosed PMDD. We're unhinged at the same cycle every time of the month. We have really crazy symptoms. We're just unhinged for 7 days out of the month before our cycle, and then we're back to our normal personalities. And then we shared some things that we do to help with those symptoms. We went down psilocybin rabbit hole, and now we think everyone should do yoga and
meditate, slow down, live, turn off your brain, stop being go, go, go.
Yeah. And I was a sleep in your dead person, and slowing down is so nice. Like, it's really cool when you're able to give yourself permission to just like go outside. I took the dogs out this morning. My husband walked out and I was sitting on the sidewalk. I was like laying on the sidewalk actually in my pajamas. And he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's so nice out." And he was like, "Okay, do you need a minute?"
Unhinged Aprils. Unhinged Aprils. Here we go.
On my sidewalk at 7 a.m. while my dog runs around in the street. And I was like, wow, this breeze, it's so nice. But I think that's like finding the little things in life, like I always joke about your rose-colored glasses. Like, find those little bright spots in your day. Because I've had actually an otherwise stressful day, but like that moment actually very much is like, you know what, I started my day well, and it was like, yeah, it kind of grounded me back. So it's super cool when you start to like slow down and literally just fucking smell the roses, So I think that's it for this unhinged episode. I wish we could offer these like twice a month, bi-weekly, but we're only unhinged 1 week out of the month. So this is all we can give you. But I hope this was helpful, our hour-long ramble, and we will see you guys for the next episode.
Bye.